All right. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jonathan Hamilton. I am the president here at Point Alliance. Our topic for our latest installment of Solutions for Success is Microsoft Fabric. What's new? What's next? And for some folks, how do I get started? We are joined today by one of our senior solution architects and director of consulting services here at Point Alliance, Jan Crow. She will be leading us through an informative session of a brief presentation and then into some live demos just to explain to folks how everything fits together with some sample demonstrations. So Point Alliance, for those of you who do not know who we are a Microsoft solution provider based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We have 5 designations listed on the screen right now. Our team is 100% Microsoft certified, and for more information, we've included a link to our company profile. But without further ado, I will turn things over to Jan, and she can lead us through a great session today on Microsoft Fabric. Over to you, Jan.
Good morning. I'm just going to share my screen. I have a bit of a combination between some presentation slides and a couple of demos. So today as Jonathan mentioned, we're going to talk about what's new and what's next. The what's next is focused on how to get started in Fabric. I have a demo on a couple of things that are new, and a demo on how to get started and some of the key elements and best practices to help you guide getting a project kicked off. All right. There we go. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about some Power BI updates, mostly around the visuals. This version in March, there were a couple of versions released of Power BI in March, but the latest one is the one you'll see today. Has probably the most significant visual updates in, I believe, 5 years. And we'll also walk through getting started with Fabric with some demos and both in Power BI but also in Fabric. And you can see a couple of the pieces working. All right, so the visualization highlights. So they have changed everything around the environment from what your canvas background is, what your styling presets are, all to be more visually appealing, more uniform, consistent, and giving you a lot more options in a couple of the visuals that mean that you can choose a style preset without having to choose individual items, though you can still choose those. They've also added some updates to the themes, especially the ability to customize your theme. And they've also increased your canvas size. The canvas size is now 1920 by 1080. Which is significantly larger than the current canvas size. However, that only applies to new reports. Using with the preview settings on, using the latest version of Power BI. If you have an existing report that was created before the March update, most of those visualizations and Canvas defaults will not be changed. A lot of that is because they're going to assume that you've already customized your visualizations, and therefore they don't want to, modify your report that already works, already has your styling and whatnot. So if you wanted to take advantage of some of the new styling, you're better off creating a new report, connecting it to your existing semantic model, and re-adding your visualization to the new report. There is a new fit to content option for the canvas size, which comes in really handy as trying to space things around. There's upcoming is you can actually set a landing page. So I'm not sure how many on the call have experienced that it goes to the same page that you were last in, which is really convenient sometimes. Sometimes you just want to go to the default landing page, or have a default landing page for any new users coming in. And any new users coming in are going to get whatever page was the focus when it was published. So that comes in handy, but it's a pretty minor thing, but it can be significant if you have a lot of different pages. There's a few card visual updates, some conditional formatting updates around slicers. They've switched to Azure Maps instead of Bing Maps. So your maps will change a little bit. You may be asked to upgrade. You can do custom totals in tables, which I'm going to demo. You can do fixed column widths in tables now, so that you can, if you have, you can control your horizontal scroll bar, and I'm going to demo that as well. There's more tooltip options, auto fit markers for your scatter plots for those who use those. Input slicer numeric support, which wasn't there previously. It had some really weird bugs for certain numbers. But that needs to be tested to see if they've resolved that particular bug that we ran into with a client about 6 months ago, where one number it would just automatically increment by 1. And there's now some leader lines in the series labels for line charts, which I'm going to show that, and input slicer conditional formatting. I can show you the screen for that. And then they've done a bit of Copilot Pay user experience update, which I am not going to demo today. So let's have a quick look at a couple of the new defaults and styling presets. So as you can see, the gray gradient in your canvas is here in a new report. In an existing report that was created before the update, when you add a new page, it does not get the gray background. It continues to use the white background. The chart style. So in the charts, and charts this also has, if you created a chart in an existing report before the update, you're not going to get some of the style presets. It doesn't mean you can't modify your settings to get them. It just means it's not as easy to get them. Where I can switch, in this particular case, I'm demoing the smooth lines. And in a style preset, I can just switch that to different styles really quickly, just with a single click in the style presets, without having to set all the lines and the markers and the data labels all manually. So that's on a line chart. And you'll also notice, I'll just give you a quick overview. You now have a right-hand tab with, you can predefine what you want on that tab or your little toolbar. Format is no longer a paintbrush under the build. It's now a separate flyout. with in a few cases a lot more options, but for the most part, it's very similar to what you're used to seeing. For any of those who already use Power BI, the data pane is not changed. And the build is a slightly more obvious update on where to place your elements. It's a minor visual change. Um, Also on line charts, you can have leader lines. Leader lines are these little lines. So if you've got um, um, a legend on your line chart, and especially if you have a lot of them, it's sometimes hard to see which line is associated with which. Um, with which leader line. And this is just configured with series labels. You can change um, where you've got your leader lines, your background color, what your color is for this line. You can take it away. You can add it back. Just by, so you turn on series label, you turn on leader lines, and they come back. You can also change your background colors and all sorts of interesting things around transparency, what your line style is, dashed or dotted. And it comes in handy. The other style presets that have changed a little bit is the bar charts. So they have some style presets of data labels or default. They don't have as many style presets, just a few. And then on tables and slicers, I'm showing you a regular table. By default, it's a sum in your column. So if you have a distinct count, in this case, I'm doing a distinct count of the customer ID per month for the sale and including a sum of the sales amount. And if I go over, and if you know, when you do a sum, that gives you a total of, over 3,000 customers, but that's not what your total customer base would be. It would, and most of the time you would want to do, a lot of the times you would do an average, but instead you can actually right click on the column, customize the total, and do a count distinct in the total line as well, which comes in really handy for things like count or mins and max. And you can also do, this was there a little while ago, you can also change other things for your visual calculations, which comes in here really handy. Most people do sums or counts and averages, but there are other options. Okay, slicer presets. They have a couple of different styles now, from the default, which is a drop down, to a tile, which is, just move that over here, which is just a multi-select checkboxes, but you can override those styles. And they also have a list, which is very similar as well, but it's got a transparent background. And you can still override those where you can choose tile, and you can actually choose tile down here as well, and it makes it into cards, clickable cards. All right, so input slicer. The biggest change on the input slicer is conditional formatting, where you can change, format your color with some rules, or with gradients, field rules, field values, and stuff like that. I'm not sure how many people would actually use that functionality, but it's interesting. One thing I like about the input slicer is you can type in a value, and I don't know if anybody noticed, but my table's changed because it's now filtering on beauty. You can define that I'm looking for contains beauty or does not contain beauty, and you'll notice that I did filtered my slicer up here, or does not contain, leaves blank, household goods and food and beverage, and filters out. So you've got a couple of different options on the input slicer. And that comes in handy when you're looking for a partial name in a really large list and saves you having to scroll down, 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 trying to find that value in a drop-down list. So that's a quick demo of a couple of the key features that have changed. All right. And feel free to ask me questions at any point. You don't have to wait till the end, but so I'm going to move on to getting started with fabric. What I'm going to show today is a demo of two options, but they have a lake house and a warehouse, so you can see the difference. They have pipelines, they have business intelligence, of course, with Power BI and semantic models. We're not going to demo Copilot, but it's good to note that it's only available in a paid capacity. It is not available in the trial. And you can generate code and create pipelines and stuff like that with Copilot in the Fabric environment. If you so wish, or you can create all of those manually. There are a bunch of database options: Lakehouse, Data Warehouse, Datamart, Cosmos DB, and Azure SQL. Cosmos DB and Azure SQL will be an extra cost, but it's now part. You can create it through this environment. For our purposes, we're going to talk about a lakehouse and a warehouse. Lakehouse basically for structured and unstructured data, and I'll show you what I have in my lakehouse is a combination of both. The data warehouse is ideal for structured data. You don't put unstructured data in it unless you can structure that data. And we're going to walk through just some simple pipelines and semantic model and reports. So the best practices is in this diagram, I have CSV files. They can be any source. There's a lot of different connectors to get data. In my Lakehouse example, I'm using CSV files, and I'm actually storing the CSV files in the Lakehouse and then transforming them into structured tables. So, but keep it simple. Too complex, it becomes very difficult to debug and maintain. Especially when you want to get started, you keep it as simple as possible. We're using Fabric native orchestration, like built-in pipelines right in the Fabric environment. All of these objects are stored in OneLake that comes with Fabric. We're doing a lakehouse first design in one case and a warehouse first design in another. And in some cases, you could use your lake house for your bronze, silver. If you're using a medallion architecture, you can use your lake house for your bronze, silver data manipulations and use your warehouse for your gold. There's a lot of flexibility on how you want to apply your architectural design. My other recommendation is you predefine the semantic model with predefined aggregation rules and data formats and standard calculated measures. That you use direct lake access rather than import or even direct query. If it's in Fabric, it's direct lake, it's a lot faster. And data warehouse, as I said, is optional, but you can interchange and do one or the other. You don't have to do both. It all depends on what the source of your data is and how you're going to use it and how you're going to cleanse it. So let's have a look at our Fabric environment. So I have a workspace. You'll notice up at the top, I actually have tied that workspace to source control. And so every time I make a change, it tells me indicates well, I've got an uncommitted change. I can check that in and track changes in source control, which really comes in handy because all of this environment, with the exception of Power BI, I have done with the browser using the Fabric interface. So what we'll do is I created a lakehouse, so we'll take a quick look at the lakehouse. And it has the Lakehouse endpoint as well as a SQL Analytics endpoint. So you have tables under, for those who are familiar with SQL, it'll look, even in the Lakehouse endpoint, it'll look familiar. There's a schema and there's the table name. But in the Lakehouse, I also have the option of having files and shortcuts to systems like Dynamics 365 and stuff like that. So these files I uploaded and then transformed through pipelines into my facts and dimension tables. And then in my warehouse, which is a separate entity, will look very similar, but it doesn't have the option for files. So you would have to have those files either um, um, in the Lakehouse or in Azure Storage or your OneDrive, or even connecting to SharePoint and then bringing that data in through a pipeline. So we have our tables here, and you can run SQL queries against them. You can have security. So it's very similar to a SQL database. And then if you click on one table, you can see the data inside of it. And all right, so then I created pipelines, and these three pipelines were for CSV files that are stored in the Lakehouse. I'm just going to show you one pipeline for the interest of time because I'm getting close. And I've strictly used a consecutive copy data commands, where I've defined a source. In this case, it's a query. In this case, it's also a query, or you could choose a table or even call a stored procedure. This source is actually an on-premise source. I'm connecting through the data access gateway. And then you define your destination, whether you're doing an insert update or what they call an upsert, and you define the key for that. And you define your mapping of source to destination. And you can just click run to run your pipeline, or you can schedule your pipeline using defining a trigger. That's a very simple, straightforward pipeline aligning to our keep it simple rules. Then I've created, I will show you the warehouse semantic model. I actually created the semantic model in this environment rather than using Power BI. And then I connected Power BI to the semantic model. So it looks very similar. It's where you define you connect your to your OneLake, to the warehouse, you choose your tables, then you define your relationships and how they work. And then you define your format. So a good example would be this one where I defined my date format, and for every date, I've defined them the same way. Sales amounts, I've defined that it's currency, and whether I have 1,000 separator, and what my default aggregation is, which is all key so that the user doesn't have to do that individually every time they create a new report against the semantic model, that all the base values are done for you. All right, so, and then we have a Power BI dashboard, or a full report actually. And this is what it looks like within the Power BI environment, but this is what it looks like in Power BI itself. So you'll notice that my lines here on my chart, I mentioned earlier that existing charts built prior to the last update do not get the style presets, and I don't even have it as an option. So if I wanted those smoother lines, I'd have to define those separately through the line configurations. And it just, so I can choose smooth that way, or my interpolation type. So in this case, so I have in that data model, I was able to build all of this without having to customize anything within Power BI itself. Now, one thing that we'll talk about in future is sales forecasting. In a future session, we'll talk about forecasting. In this particular case, it's important to note that I built the separate through some mathematical calculations. I've built a forecast, so you can use different tools for forecasting. In this case, I've used open opportunities times 80% of open opportunities per month, and assuming 10% sales for same time period last year to come up with my forecast values. There are a lot of forecasting options available, but that's what the forecast is in this. So that is my update for today. Anybody have any questions?
I do not see any questions in the chat, Jan, today. So I think maybe what we'll do is just share a screen for upcoming events. But thank you so much for your session today. Lots there in a limited amount of time. So upcoming Solutions for Success sessions are on the screen now. You can find those at pointalliance.com/events. But our next session will be in May, and it will be on Microsoft Azure migrations and moving your infrastructure from on-premise to the cloud. So unless anyone has any further questions, you will see a QR code on the screen. Please do leave us a review of what you enjoyed, maybe topics for a future session. But thank you again for taking the time to be with us today. And do reach out if you have any follow-ups that you'd like to discuss further. Thank you very much.